Welcome to this week's Off the Court, and we are there. We are finally into finals time. To talk us all through that and about her injury and the season, I welcome Cardiff Dragons' Leah Middleton. Welcome.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Super exciting.
I know, it's so exciting to have you here. Bearing in mind, we haven't seen you take the court since round 3 after what can only be described as probably a really horrific injury. I think we've got to start there. It seems weeks, months ago now, but still probably fresh in your mind and lots of the Cardiff fans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it feels like yesterday and about 5 years ago all at the same time. It was a pretty horrific injury, I'm not going to lie. One that not many people probably knew much about when it first happened. But no, I'm on route with my rehab. I'm cracking and raring to go. So yeah, super excited to be here and yeah, happy to chat things through.
Netball's such a small world, isn't it? And I think we were all heard once that injury had happened, and there were so many rumours kind of swirling around. I know you've probably talked about it a million times, but you know, we've got used to ACLs and Achilles and all the horrific ankle injuries, but this one was slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think playing sport, you always have an element in the back of your mind where, you know, you're at a risk of having an injury. And I think, like you said, ACLs, Achilles, very, very common. But to wake up in a trauma ward, probably not something you expect after playing a match of netball. And yeah, it was pretty horrific. But all I can say is I'm so lucky. I think an injury like that could have gone one or two ways. And thankfully for me, it's taken such a positive turn. And yeah, all things are looking really positive.
Did they say anything about it? Was it just completely freak? Because I was saying, we've been doing this a very long time and I've never witnessed anything quite like what happened. Like a break like that with sort of on the court. It was bizarre.
Honestly, my surgeon just described it to me as an absolute freak accident, 1 in a million chance. He is an extremely experienced surgeon with 30 plus years, you know, working in his industry, and he honestly said to me he's never ever seen a compound dislocation without a break, and that's what I have. So, you know, crazy, really scary times. I had that first surgery to kind of correct all of the skin side of things, and now I'm dealing with a really awful ankle sprain, which sounds a lot less dramatic, but you know, I can just thank the lucky stars above for it.
You are from overseas, you've come over from Australia, you've spent a long time in the UK now, but how was that impact for family watching at home? Because I'm presuming mum, dad, they're all there sitting watching back on live on the YouTube stream.
Yeah, crazy. Obviously, I do feel like I've been here for ages and I've adopted many family members along the way. But yeah, I think it was extra tough for my parents back home, obviously trying to watch on the stream, but not able to kind of have all of the information. And like you said, the rumour mill was insane. I know it popped up on a news article back home and it was something about the knee and something about something else. So yeah, it was pretty scary times, but just happy that I've had all the support here.
Yeah, well, we're happy that you're recovering, you're in great recovery, and that you'll be able to continue playing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the plan. I remember one of the really early appointments, I said, oh God, like, are you going to move my ankle already? And the first thing the surgeon said was, well, you've got to move it to play netball. And I was like, yep, absolutely. Off you go, move it. So yeah, I'm just so thankful that everything's turned out the way it is and recovery's going well, and rehab is a hard slog, but we're getting there. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's turn our attention to Dragons then. The season's now over. It was the last round at the weekend. 2 wins for Dragons this time around. I mean, it took till round 9 to get that first win, but there definitely seems to be some growth in that group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that first win, I feel like it was a long time coming, obviously having a draw against the Mavericks. But, you know, our coach, Renga, she just says we have to, you know, focus on being better each week. And I do think the girls have really taken that in their stride. They've had some really competitive matches that have gone right down to the wire, taken a bonus point off Thunder, which was amazing. And, you know, although we haven't always had that consistency for 60 minutes, you know, they've put a great effort out there and it is going in the right direction.
Do you think it's worked then? Do you think this whole condensing the league, squads of 10, do you think it's made an impact on those top to bottom teams?
Oh, I think there's still a long way to go, and I definitely think the teams that are at the top are the ones that can get it consistent for a longer period of time. I think it's moving in the right direction, definitely. I just think there's some, you know, speed bumps and things to kind of overcome along the way. But yeah, definitely moving in the right direction.
Kind of takes time though, doesn't it? Because I think there's been a spread of talent, and like you said, some of the teams at the bottom a few years ago would have struggled to get anywhere near the top and to take a bonus point off Thunder to push Mavericks to extra time. Like all those things are a step in the right direction. But the timing and consistency together, and the, when you look at some of these clubs at the top that are consistently making the top, they've had very few changes through their setups, their structure, their coaching teams, and the players that are coming through the system. Surely time has got to be given as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at Loughborough and, even Pulse, they've had the same players and same coaches for such a long time. So I do think, Dragons this year with a new coach, a couple of new players coming in, it will take time. And I do think, our group, we have such a strong mentality. We've got this never say die attitude. And I think, that has shown through games. There's been times where, we've definitely gone in as the underdogs and we've put out some real good stuff out there. So, yeah.
Talk to me about Rainga Bloxham then coming over and the impact she had. Because I read an interview at the start and it was like, we want to make top four, we want to be winners. I know Jill Mack was the coach that before her, and it was very much sort of that fighting attitude. And that's definitely seen a shift in the culture. How hard do you think it is for international coaches to come over into our league and realise almost the gulf and the challenges they're going to have to face?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Coming from the ANZ, there's definitely differences. And I think probably coming over to a new team, a new competition, and then have new rules sprung on all at the same time, I'm sure she would say that it's been a challenge, but not one she shied away from. So, yeah, I can just imagine that next season she'll be coming back raring to go, probably have more ideas up her sleeve. She came over with some really wild and wacky structures and things that we, absolutely loved. So yeah, I can just imagine that she brings more and more of that next season. And I'm excited to see how she goes.
I'm excited to see the off the court movement as well. I know we've still got finals to play, but final series, it will fly by just like everything else. And all the coaches at the minute still have their eye on what their squads look like for next year. So it's a really weird time because you're trying to get through this finals, but you're also trying to look at who you're retaining, what's happening. There's lots going on with contracting at the moment. They're still working out sort of the transfer window that sort of shifted each year. We know several players are on one-year contracts. That's been announced to the players for the very first time. That's gone through the MPA. So everybody knows if they're in the MPA, who's on a 1 year, who's got a longer deal. Yeah. That's also gone to the clubs as well. Do you think that's important?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always find this time of year wild. Clubs are prepping for finals and, clubs also have eyes on players here, there and everywhere. So it's such a strange time for players. But that list being made public for us, I just think is really important. It should be out there and people should know where there's gaps, but also what their teammates are on, who they're going to be playing with in the future. It's so important to, building those connections and things like that. And yeah, I do think it's important and I think it should be out there.
There's this fear, isn't there, in netball all the time that we shouldn't have perhaps the open communication. Injury is a prime example with that. And contracting for me is another thing. I've been very vocal about, I think we should know, because as a club, you want to be able to approach players when the time is right, when you have your window of opportunity. And actually it stops those kind of awkward conversations. It's like, oh, I know you're in a 3-year deal. I'm not going to come to you. Not all players have got agents, so there's a protection piece for the players here, I think, as well, knowing, and also that opportunity to go, well, actually, there's 3 defender spots here at Leeds Rhinos, for example, I can go there, or there's 4 attacking spots here at London Mavericks, I could try my luck there. And I think that kind of matters in the era we're in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing worse than having an awkward conversation of saying, oh, actually, I'm already locked in, or, vice versa. And I do think it's really important. I know back home in the Suncorp League, it's out there and it's public for everyone to see, including the fans. And I think that's huge as well, just so people can kind of have that idea of where people are at and what clubs are looking for, and, who's staying consistent with players and who's looking for something new. It should definitely be out there.
And you picked up on it there. Like, one of the first things players ask you when you're talking to them is, who's staying? Who's there? And I think that does matter. For the clubs to build the consistency we've just talked about, to be able to make sure that you can compete at the top four, but also for the players to understand who they're going to partner with and who their internal competition is, right?
Oh, 100%. And, squads going down to 10, not just starting 7 partnerships, but the training, what that's going to look like, how intense that's going to be, how competitive it is in that group. It is really important, and I think it should be spoken about a lot more, so hopefully we're on the right track.
So final question on this then, do you think there'll be a lot of movement this year, and do you think we're going to see players sign longer contracts? In the past it's only been sort of 1 to 2 years not fully committing.
I would hope so. I think players committing to longer contracts, obviously, it can only lead towards that consistency that we spoke about earlier. I think not only that, but it gives players, a little bit more stability in their life, because, a lot of players in our league, they don't know what they're doing past July, and that's really hard. I do hope so.
Perfect. Listen, let's move it on to post-season then. So we know there'll be a signing window, then there'll perhaps be some movement. You've got feathers stuff coming up, playing for that Welsh side, building up to the Commonwealth Games. You'll obviously be back in time for camps later in the year and hopefully the Celtic Cup as well. How exciting is that for you to be going alongside the Super League?
Super exciting. I think me playing for Wales came as a shock to a lot of people, including myself. So
how did that conversation come about?
It was a dinner with Nia Jones a couple of years ago. Number one recruiter, but I'm so thankful to have been welcomed into that Welsh squad, and it's something that I wasn't, expecting in my netball career. So, I'm super happy. I think the camps, the way they've fallen, all things are looking well for me to be fit for those camps in September. So, I'm really excited to get back out on court. I think it's a really great opportunity to go and, train really hard pre-Super League next year and, be fit and raring to go, hopefully, for the back end of this year.
Incredible. And just the final piece of the Super League finals coming up next weekend. Different format this year. Yeah. Gone to how SSN do it. Do you like that, the minor major semi-final?
Absolutely. I just think it stretches out the excitement a little bit longer. But also I think it rewards the teams that have done well in the league to finish at the top. So, I do like it. I think it's going to be 2 feisty matches and I can't wait to watch.
So who's your money on?
My money's on Loughborough Lightning.
all the way, Loughborough Lightning.
I think Loughborough Lightning 3-peat, but you know what? I do think Mavs are going to give Thunder a good run for their money in that final. I don't think that Thunder are going to do it twice to Mavs in a row.
Oh, this is brilliant. You can come again, because everybody sits in that chair and tells me my team, London Mavericks, are going to lose. I'm like, all right, we'll see what happens. No. I think the matchups are really interesting. That's what I'm intrigued about. What about Loughborough losing to Panthers at the weekend then?
Yeah, I just think Loughborough, they're just not a team that lose like that twice. And I think
I can vouch for that. We played them the week after they'd lost like that before, and they weren't holding back.
They're 100% not a nice team to come up against after they've lost. I do think that they'll be raring to go come these finals. I think they would have taken so much from that loss on the weekend. I think they would have learned a lot. And I think they're going to put out a good performance come finals.
And coming to that then, experience counting for a hell of a lot, because, you talked about Pools having a group together, but they've come from a younger place. They lost a lot before they got very good, and they're sort of looking untouchable this season. However, they've had a few moments. Loughborough's experience, though, it's almost untouchable when you get into those kind of pressure moments.
Yeah, I know it's cliche, but you can't buy experience, can you?
No, trust me, you cannot.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that experience is gonna work wonders for them, and I think some of those players, they've got grand final experience, and you can't beat that.
So I've got a few questions that were sent in by our off-the-court listeners. A lot asking when you'll be back on court. You kind of alluded to September time. Will it be through the summer on court and then into camps? Or?
Yeah, I hope so. We've got a really exciting week next week. We're off running, so we'll see how that goes. But hopefully September time we'll be back kind of more in that unrestricted zone of back on court and training. Hopefully back end of this year we'll be raring to go.
And a lot of questions asking sort of how you've stayed positive in that time. I know you spoke about not wanting to rewatch the injury and that kind of being almost not remembering it at all. But it must have been quite traumatic at times.
Oh, yeah, look, it was hard, but I think, I gave myself the first week. And then
good.
After that, I was just like, I have one of two choices here. And, one choice is to kind of, say, call it a day and that's it. And this awful thing's happened. And the other choice is actually to be positive and, hopefully try and inspire some other people. I know so many people that have gone through injuries, and athletes especially. And sometimes we kind of shy away from talking about it. And I just think it's really important to kind of be as open and honest about it as possible. And yes, it was an awful thing, but hopefully one day when I make that return, it will feel sweeter than any other time I've run out because of how hard I've had to have worked to have got there.
Yeah, I actually, like you sharing your story and being so open about it, it's actually been really interesting. And I think it has to be a personal choice, but you would have helped other people with that as well.
Oh, 100%. The messages I've received, it's crazy to me how little impact you think that you have until something like this happens. And all of a sudden, there's young girls that have had this sort of thing happen or something along the similar lines and don't have the support around me that I have. And, I'm so thankful for the support that I've got. So if I can give anything back to, anyone on a similar path or journey, then I want to.
Final question. How does it feel to have the best brother in the world from your brother? That's from Elliot.
Oh my gosh, so cute. I actually miss him so much, honestly. Wish he was here. He actually sprained his own right ankle last week. Definitely not as bad as mine, but he was trying to take my limelight, I'm sure. But no, miss him and love him lots.
Annoying older brother, annoying younger brother?
Younger brother, I taught him all his ways.
The best way.
Yeah.
Listen, Leah, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts. Joining me on Off the Court this week is Sky commentator Lucy Goodman. Welcome to the show, Lucy.
Thanks very much for having me.
You're welcome. We've just heard from Leah Middleton there. She was talking about how traumatic her injury was, but I want to talk about just the injuries across the board this season. We had a chat earlier in the season to some of our other guests about the squads of 10. But even speaking to Leah then, hers was like a 1 in a million chance of injuries. Do you think it has been a squad of 10 thing, or do you just think it's been one of these years stepping up to that new intensity?
I mean, I would love to see some data on this. It's hard to say, but anecdotally, it does feel like there have been more, not even necessarily just more this year, but more serious ones, more season-ending ones. So if there is any data to support that, I mean, I would love to get my hands on that. But some of them have been, I mean, you'll know better than anyone, Tamsin, with London Mavericks, Chelsea Blackman, Vicky Oyosola, now Raz Koshi as well. It does just seem that both the frequency and the intensity of the injuries has stepped up a notch. And I think that's, in a way, not to be expected, but it's not surprising when you do go down to squads of 10. And that probably was something that I personally, as a fan, was a little bit concerned about when the news came out prior to the season. And we've seen from SSN as well, they've kind of learnt that lesson with this 11th player that they have, that clubs can all now bring in if they want to. So I do think it's something that potentially needs to be looked at with the loading and the training that everyone's now doing, which is naturally increasing as we're going on this professionalization journey. But yeah, it does seem particularly bad this year.
Yeah, I think it's been hard. I mean, from our point of view, I wouldn't say the loading's increased in terms of we rarely have a session with 10 players. And if we do at London Mavericks, we don't go as long. So, right. There is this kind of change and shift in what all the clubs are doing. I'd be intrigued to see whether the level of intensity's gone up on the court in terms of the games and the matchups and whether that has had impact. But I mean, we have gone through our data relentlessly, and we'll be doing that off this season as well, looking back at certain things. And it'll be really interesting to see whether there is any correlation at all. And it's quite interesting you talk about that 11th player as well, because one of the big things that the squads of 10 was trying to do was even out the playing field, right? Was to make sure that you had the talent spread across the teams, which I think you've seen more movement. And I guess the danger of then going back to adding more players is that the top teams are able to hoard, and that kind of defeats the object.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I do still think there's talent that we've lost this year who are, perhaps playing in next gen that are absolutely deserving of a space in the Super League. So I do think there is talent that isn't currently being utilised. For example, the likes of a Phoebe Maslin at Team Bath, like arguably she absolutely deserves a spot in the Netball Super League. And there's also, the salary caps as well. So is there going to be a hoarding when they all have to share the sort of same salary cap? I don't know. But I just think from a player welfare perspective as well, if we can look at the data and if the MPA can get involved to to sort of analyze the impact of having 10 this season, I do think there is room for a bit of flexibility there, and for some of the stars of the Next Gen League to come back up and shine as well.
I think there's a couple of things in that for me. Like the salary cap at the moment, I don't, because it is brilliant. It's shifted. It's getting players more on professional level and evening it out. I still think there's not major decisions there. I still think you can manipulate that cap quite easily to keep players that you want to keep. But what is quite intriguing, like saying names like Phoebe Maslin, I think she's absolutely brilliant, so much talent potential. One of the things we were looking at when we lost two of our starting defenders to start off with was positional is an issue, and especially with the import rule as well. So, we ended up going overseas for Gemma Donoghue, who's coming and doing an outstanding job. But that kind of positional piece at the minute, you almost have endless supplies of mid-quarters that can come in and slot in. But bringing in that circle defence, you only have to look at SSM with the Giants bringing back Casey Kapua. Like, do those positions exist? And actually, for me, is that the bigger topic here, that we need to make sure we're investing in that younger English talent in those kind of areas?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And obviously, with the retirement of Jiva Mentor as well, who's no longer going to be playing in the Super League, that does kind of bring that question to the fore. I mean, if you look at Next Gen, I do think there's an amazing talent there available, but I don't know if they've necessarily been seen. I have a little bit of a team bath excuse me, bias, because I've been doing the commentary for the Next Gen for this season. And, the likes of a Lottie Robinson have been absolutely outstanding. Daisy Harrison, incredible. And it would be really intriguing to see how they go in a Netball Super League environment. But I do think, from an England goalkeeper perspective, obviously with the Roses programme athletes being announced, there are quite a lot of goalkeepers in there now. But do we have that player who's really put their head above everyone else to say, I'm going to be England's starting goalkeeper? Well, not 100% sure, but where I think the wing attack position used to be an area of concern for England, and now it's kind of that goalkeeper position. It's really interesting.
I think that's right, isn't it? The talent is there. There's no doubt about it. We get new players coming through all the time. I guess the shift into professional era now, and it's actually something I challenged Jess Selby on the other week. If you're going to have someone like Yomi Wilson in the full-time England programme, but she isn't actually in a 10, let alone in a starting position of Super League, what is that saying about how we're developing our talent? Because we know in SSN that wouldn't happen. They have the infrastructure underneath that they're ready to almost play at that level. And I think we've seen it this year. The likes of Shannon Malik, Gracie Smith, they are out there absolutely performing. But what you can't have is a whole team of that age. And, Loughborough have shown with the heaps of experience. And one of the things we've suffered at London Mavericks this year is not having that necessarily experience in all areas of the court. So players are having to learn and develop as they go. So I guess there's two prongs to it, isn't it? It's not necessarily the talent doesn't exist, but you just mentioned Jiva Mentor there. There's no one prepped and ready to just absolutely step into that position coming through from that young age.
Yeah, 100%. And, like you were saying with Leah earlier, you can't buy that kind of experience. And if we take a prime example is Giants over in SSN, bringing in Casey Kapua, it's not just about her performances on court, but what you need to look at is the performances now of Amy Sligo and Erin O'Brien out the front of her. I think they've had back-to-back player of the matches potential. Certainly Erin O'Brien had player of the match recently. I don't think that's a coincidence that you bring someone like Casey in and then suddenly the defenders out the front of her are shining as well. So that experience is absolutely key. And it is a fine balance between giving the youth the opportunity to thrive and to experience that high level versus actually we need that leadership. We need someone who knows what to expect, who's able to bring that voice and that commanding presence onto the court. So I think it's a really intriguing time, particularly from an England perspective in that area.
Well, talking about intriguing times, it will be for England, but it's also for the Super League clubs because, we are in finals time now. That means four sides have started their summer early. Contracting is around the corner, if not happening, with the players that are existing in the team. And building up those squads, having that mixture of youth and experience is absolutely vital. Do you think we'll see much movement this year, or do you think after last year with the craziness of the professionalism that it will settle down a bit?
Or it's a hard one to call, you know. I think some teams will remain very steady. I think like a Manchester Thunder, I can't see them making too many changes. But then I think the likes of a Leeds Rhinos, potentially a Cardiff Dragons, I do think you'll potentially see a lot of change there. And there's areas for each team that I think they could probably afford to look at. You know, a London Pulse, I'd be doing everything I can if I were them to try and retain as many players as I can. But I think for them, they're in a really tricky position where for a few years now we've been saying, oh, when's Livchin going over? When's Fumi Fidoju going over to SSN? So are they actually able to retain the players that they want, or are they going to be forced into having to make a lot of changes? You know, Panthers as well, that's a difficult one with the departure of Joe Tripp, because such a big part of why players sign for a club is the coaches. So until we know kind of who's filling that space, that's a difficult one as well. And yeah, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. But I love this movement in the off season. This is so juicy. There's so much gossip. I say bring it on.
If you could pick some key players for those bottom four, who would you do? So if you could bring someone in for Forest right now that you go, that would make a massive difference to them, who would it be?
Or for me, it has to be in that goal attack position. I think Rhea Dixon at moments has really shone and has such creative playmaking, but at the point, I think she needs to transition to be a specialised wing attack, in my opinion. So I would be looking potentially. Oh, I was going to say like a Sophie Fawns in SSM, but then you wouldn't be able to have her and Stricker in the circle together, and you're not going to get rid of Rolene Stricker, let's be honest.
Nope.
So it's an interesting one. Maybe, I don't know, someone like a Berry Neal or a Sophie Kelly, who perhaps wants more starting seven court time. Obviously, she's only started twice for Pulse this season. So yeah, absolutely. For someone like a Forest, I'd be targeting someone like Sophie Kelly.
And this is why it's such a, you know, sort of a jigsaw puzzle of what you've got to do, because you can only have two imports and you can only have one in each area of the court. So if you go for an international shooter, which most teams do all around the world, you then have to get an English goal attack, right? So then it's finding those English goal attacks that are ready and there and able to step up. So it becomes very difficult to try and piece it all together.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I don't envy being a head coach at this point in the season whatsoever. But this is kind of the fun of it, right? And I think, you know, someone like a Chelsea Pittman who's come in for her first season, I think she was really clever with some of the recruitment that she did in the existing partnerships, but not every team's going to be able to do that. So I think you also need to look again then at things like versatility, and someone like I don't know, like a Leeds Rhinos, I would be, or even a Birmingham Panthers, I would be looking at some really strong mid quarters. So I'll potentially be trying to poach someone like an Elle McDonald, just to bring someone who can cover all three positions to a really high level, brings leadership, again, is a really strong presence. So yeah, there's so many different factors to consider, and you could not pay me enough money to be a Super League head coach at this time in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy time. It's actually quite interesting because you want to enjoy the finals experience. You want to, you know, push your team to get as far as you can, but there is also that looking ahead to next year, what's going to happen next year, and with the contracting piece as well, it happens so quickly once the grand finals open, gone, that transfer window is open, that you're constantly on the phone looking for that next recruitment or trying to keep your players as well. So let's focus our attention to finals then. Who are you going for?
Pulse and Lightning. I think this is going to be a Pulse win, so I think they're going to go direct to grand final. For the minor, please don't hate me, Tamsin, I do think it's going to be Manchester Thunder. Obviously, we had a preview of that in round 14. And I just don't know, with all the injuries that Mavericks have had, whether they're going to be able to turn that result around. And then grand final, I think it will be Pulse and Lightning. And I'm really, really struggling to call a winner, because either way, I think no matter who makes the grand final, no matter who wins, there's four very, very interesting storylines to come from it, if it's a Mavericks, Thunder, Pulse or a Lightning. So as a sort of true neutral, I'm kind of just here for the netball. I'm rooting for everyone because I just love the storylines that it has the potential to bring out.
Well, you've literally sold it to us all, Lucy. I mean, I'm sadly not so neutral. I'd like London Mavericks to make it, of course, but I'm here for the netball, and I cannot wait to see who makes it through onto the final, the grand final at the O2 on July the 6th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.